picture kind of tells you what's going on, but we want to be able to do this without the graph in mind. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to set the functions equal, and that is to find your points of intersection, or basically your bounds that you would have on the interval. So all this set the functions equal is about trying to find the bounds for the interval. So you would take your x squared, set that equal to 3x plus 4, and then identify the type of equation as quadratic. So you cannot use the square root method here. So what we're going to do is we're going to move everything over to one side. And then because it's quadratic, we could try to factor it. So we think about factors of -4 that add up to -3. And those factors would be -4 and +1. So the factorization would be x minus 4, x plus 1 equal to 0. And then set those factors equal to 0 to get x is equal to 4 and x is equal to -1. So the significance of that are these are the bounds of integration. So you know that your integral is going to go from -1 to 4. All right, so once you have the bounds, then the question becomes, what am I going to integrate, the bigger function and the smaller function? So the second step is to try to figure out the big minus the small. And what I usually do there is I just take my two functions to figure out which one is the bigger one, and I plug in some number inside of this interval of integration. So if 0 works, 1 would work. It doesn't matter what number you plug in. So I might plug in 1, and then here plug in 1. And what that does for me is it tells me that the first function is 1 versus the second function, which is 7. So from that information, I know that my bigger function is this 3x plus 4, and my smaller function will be the x squared function. So that's going to tell us how we are going to set up our integram, because for the third step, we're going to take the big function minus the small function. So our bound goes from -1 to 4, and we're going to take big minus small. So the big function is 3x plus 4, and then the small function is the x squared. And because this is just one term, you don't have to worry too much about brackets, parentheses, and things of that nature. And then, of course, our dx. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to integrate term by term here. So you will have 3x squared over 2 plus 4x minus x to the third over 3. And then your bound will go from -1 to 4. So you plug in your 4 first. So you have 3 times 4 squared over 2 plus 4 times 4 minus 4 to the third over 3 minus, and then in bracket, your lower bound plugged in. So 3 times -1 squared over 2 plus 4 times -1 minus -1 to the third over 3. Okay, now at that point, a lot of it really is just arithmetic, because here you have 16 divided by 2, so that's going to give you 8. So you get 24 plus 16 minus 64 over 3 minus, and then here you'll have -1 squared, so it's just going to give you a positive. So it'll be 3/2 minus 4. And then here you have your -1 to the third, so that just becomes -1. And then negative times a negative gives you a +1 over 3. Okay, and then you would just distribute, combine like terms, and get to your final answer as 125 over 6.